Detailed summary of Maru, author Bessie had published in 1971, setting rural Botswana, mainly the fictional village of Dilepe. Introduction and background. The novel begins by introducing Margaret Cadmore, a young Masarwa woman. At birth, she was orphaned and raised by a white English missionary woman, Mrs. Margaret Cadmore Sr., who adopted her and gave her an education. Margaret is taught self respect and dignity, but her Masarwa heritage still marks her as inferior in the eyes of the society. In Botswana at that time, the Masarwa people are considered subhuman, treated like slaves and domestic workers. Despite Margaret's education and abilities, she knows society will not easily accept her. Margaret arrives in Dilepe. Margaret travels to Dilepe, a small village, to become a teacher. She is calm, silent, and dignified, but her presence causes a stir. The villagers are shocked that a Masarwa girl is allowed to teach at a public school, a position of authority traditionally denied to people of her background. Despite this, Margaret quickly gains respect for her teaching abilities and calm presence, especially among the children, but socially she is still marginalized. Introduction of Maru and Moleka. Two central male characters are introduced. One is Moleka, who is passionate, impulsive, and openly kind to the poor, including the Masarwa. He is deeply affected by Margaret's presence and falls in love with her almost immediately. The second is Maru, who is intelligent, powerful, and politically ambitious. He is the traditional chief in waiting and deeply respected. Maru appears to support the racist structures of society but has complex motives. Both men are friends and rivals. They fall in love with Margaret, but they respond to their love in very different ways. Margaret's isolation and strength. Margaret continues to face isolation and subtle cruelty, especially from Moleka's and Maru's households, where she boards. But she shows no bitterness. Her inner strength, fostered by her adoptive mother, helps her to endure the prejudice with dignity. Her silent resistance and strength begin to challenge the people around her, especially the women like Dake Lady, Maru's sister, who comes to admire Margaret deeply. The love triangle. Moleka expresses his love openly and sincerely. However, he also struggles with commitment and he ends up having an affair with a servant girl, which hurts Margaret. Maru, on the other hand, hides his love, preferring to manipulate events quietly. He removes barriers in Margaret's life and slowly isolates her from Moleka by sending him away under political pretense. Eventually, Maru marries Margaret, a radical act that defies his position as chief and the societal norms that consider Masarwa inferior. By marrying her, he challenges the entire tribal hierarchy and sets a new example. Climax and resolution. The story climaxes when Maru's intentions are revealed. He had loved Margaret from the beginning and strategically positioned himself to marry her and use that marriage to end the discrimination against the Masarwa people. The novel ends with the promise of change. Margaret, once a symbol of oppression, becomes a queen, a position of influence and dignity. Significance of the ending. The ending is not just romantic, it is symbolic. Maru's marriage to Margaret is a political act, showing that leadership must challenge inherited injustice. It suggests a hopeful future where race and heritage no longer dictate worth. Key takeaways from the novel. The novel critiques racial prejudice and class hierarchy in African societies. It shows how love, education, and courage can become tools of resistance. Maru's leadership is shown as both manipulative and visionary. Margaret represents quiet dignity, proving one doesn't need to shout to resist oppression.